Hello everyone, welcome to IT Tech Talk. I'm your host Joel Ward, and with me is Hannah. Hannah, how are you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you, Joel. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just tired. It's been a long week. I'm sure it's been a long week for you. I don't know what the in and outs of your week is. It's different time zone, different area.
Yeah, it's currently just after 9 o'clock here at night.
Oh my.
And yeah, every day is just a bit different, to be honest. So today's been a day of running a lot of errands and tying up a lot of loose ends is the best way to describe it.
I'm sure. I don't know. I actually, this is off topic for what the show is, but I actually am still like really upset about Prince Harry. Prince Harry. Was it Prince Harry? Yes. The Duke of Edinburgh. I just know him by the Duke of Edinburgh.
Oh, Prince Philip.
Yeah, Prince Philip. Yeah, Prince Philip. I watched The Crown so much. I should know this. But I was saddened by his death because when I watched The Crown, there was so much about him and his life, and just so much history there. And Britain has a great history, and I always want to go over there and travel and visit the UK sometime just to see all the history. But I was very saddened by the Duke's death. I'm sure the Queen is still in mourning, but that was something I thought. I don't know how the country's still feeling, but that was really hurtful to me because I was watching the funeral, and just watching the Queen sitting there by herself was kind of upsetting because
it was quite sad. Yeah,
she hasn't been by herself for a very long time, and this is going to be hard for her.
Yeah,
but anyway,
definitely.
Moving forward, so Hannah, you are a wonderful person. I have listened to your show like daily since you come out with when you come out with episodes. I really enjoy listening to Hustle with Hannah. That's her podcast. So if anybody hasn't heard it, Hustle like Hannah, I should say, is her podcast, and you should definitely check it out. It is really good. Even though it's different time zone from what people who my listens are, there's still some great stuff you can learn from her podcast. I have other people who I listen to overseas who are in different areas, and they have some great advice that you may not understand for like our area, but it's still great to take out of it. So Hannah, could you give a little background about yourself, about your podcast, about your business, about your life? Just go over for a few minutes, and then we're going to dive into some questions.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, as you've introduced me, my name's Hannah. I'm in my 20s. Obviously, I live in the UK. I live quite north in the UK, so obviously my accent probably doesn't sound like what you typically hear on the TV or in films as a British accent. So I'm a dance teacher, so I have my own dance business. It's going to be coming up to its 3rd year anniversary in June, so I've been running it for 3 years. And I used to do it part-time when I graduated from university, but then I took it full-time in January 2020, about 6 weeks before the COVID pandemic hit. So then obviously everything went to pot. We had to try and move online, which was a bit of a struggle. And then in the summer of 2020, I decided to start my own podcast, having really gotten into them throughout the pandemic, so like up to that point, and I just loved the medium, found them very almost kind of therapeutic, and just kind of wanted to give it a go myself and try and find a bit of a niche that maybe isn't covered quite as much as other areas. And yeah, it's been a huge success, and we're slowly starting to get back to normal, I hope, in this country now in terms of the pandemic. So yeah, I'm just seeing where things go from now, really.
Awesome. So I actually seen your post about how you were broadcasting your business. So you've gotten back into dancing then, and you're getting back. So are you in in-person dance classes now? Is that what I'm understanding?
So as of April, we were able to return for children's classes with a maximum of 15 per class, and I also teach quite a few one-to-one and private classes, so obviously I've been allowed to return to them. And then, fingers crossed, our next stage on this roadmap that our Prime Minister set out of lockdown means that hopefully from the middle of May, adult classes might be able to return to. So hopefully by May, all classes will be able to run, and then hopefully by June, we won't be limited on like social distancing restrictions and capacity numbers and things like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've been kind of, in the US, we've been kind of transitioning in different states and stuff out of certain things, but we still are very much not in lockdown, but we still have very, very high restrictions, like a capacity of restaurants and stuff like that. So I totally understand it. And we just now are returning to certain things that we didn't have before. And it's kind of weird because like I didn't really affect me because I felt like even when we were on lockdown, like I was still doing things regular like I did like I normally would. There was less people around, so like going places I was like, there's not many people, but I'm still doing my normal thing. But no, so the podcast, I want to talk about that for a second. I got into podcasting during the pandemic as well, and I found it very, like you said, very therapeutic, and it's been very great for me because I'm a very social person, and during the pandemic you couldn't hang out with people, you couldn't do much, so having a podcast was really great because you could reach out and talk to people and not have to be in the same room. And one of the things that I have discussed on the show and on other shows is that during the pandemic we found out how easy it was to connect and grow online businesses and online personas with the help of podcasting equipment, with the help of webcam. We were able to grow stuff. So how easy, I like to ask this because it wasn't easy for me. I started with my phone, and that's how I started. If you listen to some of my previous episodes, they sound awful, but now I have a mic, professional equipment, professional webcam, which I'm ordering another webcam, it's more professional. But how easy was it for you to get started over there in the UK? Like, was it easy to get your equipment, or what do you use, or do you have existing equipment that you're using now?
So mine's very basic. So I used the site Anchor, which I believe is originally an American site.
Yep, that's what I'm using.
Just because it was one that was suggested to me from another person who I know who already had a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a microphone, didn't have a webcam. I had these earphones in and was using this as my mic. And I was doing all my interviews over Zoom and just recording that because mine isn't a visual podcast, it's just an audio podcast, and that was partly because I wanted to be able to do a few interviews sat in my pajamas and not have to make an effort with my appearance. But then at the end of season 1, when there was so much interest for a season 2, I thought, okay, I need to kind of up the game a bit. So I invested in a microphone. It wasn't an expensive one because finances have been hard because of the pandemic. But yeah, so I upgraded to a little microphone. I haven't upgraded to a webcam, like I say, just because it's not a visual podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's me in my house. I have my microphone. I occasionally use my ring light if I do have the camera on to chat to guests. And the interviews take place over Zoom. And I just record it and then upload the audio to Anchor, edit it, and then send it off to be published. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I actually had some help with a buddy of mine who he was really gracious in helping me get started. We were friends on Twitter, and we connected that way. I have on this screen, I have like a couple screens. On this screen I have my Audacity editing software, which I highly recommend if you know some stuff, using Audacity to edit your audio, because it's really great. It's free to use. I've been using it for years. I didn't think to use it for the podcast. I started using something else and then realized I could use this, and it's still a great quality. But no, I started with my phone. Like, you use your little mic. I actually was like using my phone, and then I got this mic, and I got the headphones. And what I realized is that it may not have been it's a $60 mic. With a $60 mic, you still get the sound quality. You still get the feel of it. You still get the quality that you want. And I realized as time goes on, I've gotten people's comments and emails and messages on Facebook and Instagram, and people are like, oh my goodness, like your previous shows were okay, but what we're hearing now is just like phenomenal. Like we love listening. I've had people say that they actually got so much information from one of my shows that they were like, wow, like I actually used your information in like a lecture. And I'm like, wow, like come on now. So
oh, wow.
Yeah, so I actually get positive feedback from my show. And one of the things that really stopped me before the pandemic, I wanted to do a podcast. The problem is I hate the sound of my voice. And I have these on, and I can literally hear my voice right now, but because I put like some of a filter over my voice so it's not as high pitched, because normally I'm really high pitched, it makes me feel better. And before, when I was listening to myself before, I was like, wow, I can't listen to myself. And now it's like I'm not trying to be fake with people, but I'm also trying to spare them the deafening sound of my voice. But no, I've realized as time goes on that it's so easy to just start a podcast. And that's one of the things I talked about in my content creation. There is, like, during the pandemic, and like I said, there was so much things that we could start. Online businesses were easier to do, doing videography, stuff like that. You could do so much from home. And it just, like Anchor, like I use Anchor. And it was so easy. You just set up your username, all that stuff you need to do, and boom, you have a podcast. And you can sit there and ramble for hours and upload it, and it's fine. It's free. And you know, people were telling me, like, oh, you should just do it, you should just do it. I just couldn't do it. And then finally I got the nerve to do it, and I'm so glad I did it. So what I'm trying to lean into your question is, are you glad you jumped into doing a podcast? Do you feel more accomplished with having all these cool guests on? Because you've had some really cool guests on. Do you feel more accomplished as a person, like getting these guests on and interviewing them yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Because like I said, I knew what podcasts were, but I never really appealed to me. And then when we first went into our first lockdown in this country, someone said to me, oh, well, why don't you try listening to them just as like a bit of a different outlet? Because obviously I listen to music loads being a dance teacher, but it gets to the point where you listen to the same songs and you're like, do you know what, I just don't want to listen to music anymore for a little while. So I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a go. And I listen to primarily comedy podcasts because I thought, you know, things are hard right now. I need a bit of a laugh. Let's go with comedy podcasts. And I just liked the idea that it was like I was in a conversation with someone, but I wasn't having to actually speak or do anything. So I was like, oh, these are cool. And I had a business mentor who I used to chat with once a month who helped me like grow my business. And when I told her that I had started listening to podcasts, she just said, oh, that's cool. So why don't you start a podcast? And I was like, no, I don't know what to talk about. Like you, I don't like the sound of my own voice. That's been a barrier that I've had to get over. But it was as if once she planted this seed, I was like, well, I guess I could. And then I started thinking about what kind of subjects I would talk about and how I'd structure it, if I'd have guests on, if it'd be just me speaking. And it was kind of a bit of a snowball effect from them, because that idea kind of came to light sort of around June, July time, and by sort of mid to late August, I was gaining guests and starting to put episodes out. So it was a bit crazy, and I was a bit nervous because I was like, oh, I don't know if anybody's really going to buy into this.
Yeah.
And then within like the first week, in fact, it was shorter than that, within the first few days of announcing that I was starting a podcast and I was looking for guests, I had about 7 or 8 guests booked in to have interviews.
Wow.
And yeah, like I said, it was just crazy. There was demand for, well, not demand, that's not the right word, but there was interest in a season 2 before I'd even finished season 1. And I'm almost at the end of season 2 now, and I've already got 5 guests lined up for season 3.
Nice.
So it's just been crazy, and I'm just happy that it's clearly a subject that a lot of people are invested in, whether it's from a listener's perspective or like a guest who has kind of walked the walk and talked the talk sort of thing. So yeah, it's definitely made me feel like I've achieved something through lockdown, even though at this moment in time it brings me no income. I just purely do it because I enjoy it and it's a hobby. But meeting loads of, like you say, I've had loads of interesting guests who have helped me as a businesswoman as well. They've said things and I've been like, oh, I'm gonna write that down, that's useful. So yeah, I'm definitely glad that I started it. Yeah, and so may I ask you, how do you go about getting guests? So I actually troll through LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff and reach out to people who I think would be interesting guests, or I do a bio on them and I'm like, like, I'm interested to learn more about you, so I'll reach out to them. That's how I don't even remember, I think I was scrolling through, it was Instagram. I was scrolling through Instagram, and you popped up in one of the podcasting hashtags. And I was like, oh, huh. So I listened to your show a couple times, and I was like, I want to get to know this girl. I want to get her information. I want to know more about her. I want to get her on my podcast. So that's why I reached out to you. So there's been so many times where I've just hit the hashtags, or I've just looked at Twitter feeds and stuff, and I reach out to people, and that's how I get. But how do you, Hannah, get these guests on your show? Do they reach out to you, or do you find them? So it's a bit of a mixture, to be honest. So like yourself, I do use Instagram, so I follow a couple of hashtags on my podcast's Instagram page. So I think the main one that I follow that I kind of find out about guests from is creative business owners, because that's kind of the niche of my show. But I also am signed up to a website called Matchmaker FM.
Okay.
And basically, it's kind of like a dating site, but for podcast hosts and guests. So you have a profile, and you say like what kind of topics you can talk about, and then obviously you can reach out to guests or you can reach out to shows. So I've gained quite a lot of guests through there, mostly by me, like you say, kind of reaching out to them. But I actually had the founder of that website on my show as well, which was very interesting. And yeah, so I basically just use social media and then that Matchmaker website. And there's been a couple of times where small businesses have actually followed my business Instagram account. So then I've used that to reach out to them and be like, oh, by the way, like, you followed me for my dance stuff, but I also do a podcast.
Yeah.
And you'd make a great guest. So yeah, I've had the odd person like email me, but it has like the majority of the time it's been me reaching out to other people.
Yeah, so actually, while you were talking, I didn't mean to, like, not be rude, but I looked up the matchmaking thing because I've been looking for places like that to get on. So I don't know if it's just a UK thing or if it's for everybody or, like, globally you can use it.
I think it's globally because a lot of the guests I've had on there have been, like, in the United States or Australia.
Okay.
So I believe it's global, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to actually look into that because that's something, like you said, like, you learn something that you want to write down. I wrote that down on my browser history so I can actually look that up because that's something... You know, there's so many different outlets, you know, anymore. But there's like, it's very hard for podcasters back then to get stuff. And now I feel like there's so much resources. But these resources, like, you know, telling me that, I'm like, wow, I didn't know about that, are so hard and hidden that, you know, when you find someone who's like, hey, you should use this, you're like, I didn't know that existed. So now, like, you know, knowing that, it's like, it's great to have other podcasters go on your show because then you're like, hey, I use this and maybe you could use it too. I was actually using this thing called Wildcast. It's based out of California. And I'm trying it out and it's okay. It's great. I just have, you know, trying to find guests is like, you know, harder and harder now. It's like I'm running low on guests and it's like maybe I should find something like this. And it's kind of fun. It's like a dating site for podcasters. I think that's really cool because, you know, stuff like that actually helps podcasters because then they can weed out the people they don't want on their show. They can put someone exactly who fits their show. And yeah, so I think that's great. So going more into the podcast, I feel like we're on a theme right now. Like some of my questions roll into a theme about podcasting. So let's keep talking more about podcasting. So,
sure.
You know, you do this as a hobby. You don't get paid. I however, am getting paid by monthly users. And I don't think that Anchor allows different countries right now to get paid from their site. I think it's only based on the U.S. But one thing that I have realized so easily with Anchor is my show, as soon as it launches, is immediately on Spotify, is immediately on everything else. Whereas some other platforms, you have to help force it through. Whereas like Anchor, they put everything out there. They you know, and I've reached out to their customer service because one time, I updated my album cover, and my album cover didn't update across the board, and I was like, my old album cover looks awful. Like, I need this new album cover. And reaching out to Anchor, they were very pleasant to talk to. And they came back right away. They're like, we just need your information. We'll push it through as long as we know what we're doing. And they got my information. Like, okay, we know who you are. We know what we need to do. They pushed it through. And boom, it was up. It was running. It looked phenomenal. And more professional. And people were like, oh my goodness, like, this is a real, like, I love, like, who did this? And I was like, I did it. Like, I designed that. So, like, you know, people like us, we're in the creative spirit, and you are a dancer, so you definitely have that creative spirit. You've got that going on. So your podcast is a baseline of just getting people on who share common goals and creativity, which I think is awesome. So I'm blanking. I said something. Sorry, it's been a long week. But your creativity. So you want to broadcast creativity, whereas I broadcast entrepreneurship, leadership, business, influence. So like recently I had, I don't know if you've listened to any of my episodes, but I had a model, a plus size model on my show, and she was producing, oh my goodness, pushing body positivity. And that's one, actually I've had her on my show before, and the outreach from her being on my show has been really great because people are like, oh my goodness, you're not just putting people on who are like entrepreneurs. We're like, that's boring. Like, you're putting on people who are different backgrounds and stuff, and you're getting people who we can relate to. And one of the things, and I don't know if you get input back, and I want to ask about that in a second. One of the things I get input back on is that I'm so real with my guests. Like, if I mess up on the podcast, I don't edit that out. I keep it in because I feel that if I'm real with people, they'll be real with me, and I've found that actually works. So in your editing, you know, do you edit out like blips and stuff like, oh, I missed it there, I'm going to edit that out and make it look good? What do you do in your creativity side to make this podcast work? Like, you know, do you spend like 20, 30 minutes editing to make sure it's right? Or do you just like, yeah, that sounds good, I'm just going to go to this clip for 5 seconds and check it out? For me, I take at least an hour to edit. So what are the, give us some tips and stuff of what you do.
So I am probably a little bit more of a perfectionist than yourself. So I do edit out like stumbles and 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 things like that. I do keep some in because sometimes taking them out just makes it sound strange. Like if somebody's saying a sentence and they go da 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 da, taking the out makes it sound too choppy, and that annoys me. So I do leave some of them in, but I tend to take them out if they kind of stop the flow of the conversation. But I don't necessarily set aside a specific amount of time for editing. I mean, up until recent weeks, I've been at home all day, every day, so it kind of didn't matter how long I was spending on each one. But it all depends really on the length of it. So I have some podcast interviews that only last maybe about half an hour. So the editing side of things is fairly quick. But then I have some that literally max out the hour-long slot that we have set aside. So they take a lot longer. So I'm actually editing one at the moment. I was doing it earlier today. And I cut my audio clips into 5-minute clips because I tried to edit the full thing and Anchor just had a meltdown and didn't like it. So I cut it down into 5-minute clips and then upload the 5-minute clips to Anchor. So I'm editing one at the moment that's coming out on Monday, and that one contains 12 audio clips because we spoke for like a full hour. So I'm not quite halfway through with that one yet, so that's taken a little bit longer than some of the previous ones, but I just make sure that I set aside like good blocks of time to get it done. I try and get it done early on in the week, so like Monday to Wednesday, just so then when it gets to the end of the week, I'm not stressing and being like, it's not ready to go, because I release it every Monday. So I like to have it in place, and then at the weekend, I just quickly record the introduction, because obviously, well, you've listened, so you'll know I do like a little weekly debrief, I guess you could call it, of how
Which
my
I think
week's
is really
gone.
cool, actually. It's really cool you do that.
Yeah, so I have to obviously wait for the weekend to do that, because we can't talk about a week that's not happened yet. So, yeah, but I'm not too strict on like how much time I spend on it. It's just more of a spending enough time so that it sounds okay, basically.
Yeah. So let's switch gears for a second. I just want to talk real quick. We're getting close to our time. I want to talk real quick about entrepreneurship. You are an entrepreneur yourself. You have a dance business. Could you give a few tips? And I know we're in different countries and different time zones and stuff, but it's still, and like I said, I feel like entrepreneurship is the same whether you're in another country or not. You can offer things. What are some things that you have done to strive to put yourself in a better position as an entrepreneur? Like, what are things you could tell someone to do better? Like, if you were to look back and say, hey, as a younger entrepreneur, which I've had a lot of younger entrepreneurs on my show or listening, what is something younger entrepreneurs can do that would better themselves as an older entrepreneur would say?
I think for me, one of the things that I wish, kind of looking back, I would have done is spent a bit more money on marketing, because there is a lot of free marketing out there. Like, obviously, when it comes to social media and different apps like Canva, you can do those things for free and they do work, but there's a lot to be said for marketing that you pay for. And I've dabbled in that a bit, but I've not probably spent as much as I should, and I've found that maybe if I had have done, I would have got better reach earlier on. And I joined TikTok last year, because obviously that was like the big craze, but I didn't really take it too seriously. But in the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks, I was taking it a lot more seriously, to the point where like I can actually make money from TikTok now, and like I have over 100,000 followers, and as a result of that, my business went from having the business Instagram account, went from having 300 and something followers, which, bearing in mind, it took me the best part of 3 years to get 300 followers.
Yeah.
It now has nearly 2,500 followers as a result of TikTok. So
yeah.
I would definitely recommend social media, because again, TikTok's free. Social media, but also, like I said, flip side of that, definitely consider setting aside a pot of money just for marketing. So whether that be through a digital marketing agency, or paying out for certain software or apps, or paying out for a graphic designer, or just something. Obviously not, you don't have to do it on the regular, because that's the point. The freebies are there for you to use. But I think, especially when it came to me doing my online classes during the pandemic, I think I could have reached a lot more people if I'd have just kind of invested in it a little bit more. So I think that would be my my big tip.
Did you mention, I think I caught that, but did you mention you use Canva as well?
Yes, I do,
Yes.
yeah.
It is one of the things that I've actually pushed in another episode, content creation. Canva is one of the things that I use daily. I use it for letterheads. I use it for logos. For whatever I'm doing in my business, I use it. And it's free. I pay the $9 or $10, whatever it is, for the premium version. And it's not that bad. I pay for it. I use it. But you're right. There is so many free resources out there which people don't seem to get a hold of. And you know, there is like TikTok, which I haven't gotten into the TikTok craze yet. But hearing what you're saying, it's like, wow, maybe I should invest in TikTok and use it to broadcast my podcast, broadcast different areas of my shows or my business or my YouTube channel, stuff like that. Because, I mean, I have an IT business, I have a marketing business, and, you know, I do the marketing business for friends because they're like, hey, can you, it's basically a graphic design business at this point. Can you create a ad for my website or for my Facebook or this? And so I'll design it and send it to them, and I get paid for that. But, like, you know, there's so many resources out there that are accessible that people are like, well, you could do this yourself. It's just like my buddy came to me and said, hey, I need a logo done. I know you do them. Can you do it? And I'm like, yeah, I can do it, but I mean, do you want to pay me or do you want to do it yourself? He's like, I know nothing about this. Just do it. So I did it, and he actually slapped it on the side of his, didn't literally, but he had it printed and on someone's Cricut, if you know what Cricut is. I don't know if you have Cricuts in the UK.
I'm not sure.
They're like printers for like stickers and stuff.
Oh, okay. We
Yeah.
probably do, but I've never heard of
They're
them.
for crafty people, which I am not. But but he had it printed and he stuck it on the side of his one business machine, and it's like he drives it around and it has his logo on it. I think it looks really cool. And I joked to him the other day. I was like, "Who made that for you?" I was like, "It looks really good." He's like, "Dude, come on now." He's like, "You better be messing with me." I was like, "But no, there is so much free resources out there. Canva is one of the greatest resources." I was using Spark Post. Which is another, it's like Adobe Spark Post, which is great, but there's so much more resources in Canva than there is in Spark Post. So if you're looking for, this is advice, if you're looking, not for you, but for everybody listening, if you're looking for something to use for graphic design that you don't want to pay somebody, you want to just dabble in it yourself, Canva would be a great way to get started. And I think if you were intro into it, it's a great way to get started. So going back to the entrepreneurship, is there things that you have realized, you know, with the pandemic that you've had to adjust as an entrepreneur? Like I know there's things that we've had to adjust in our business and doing things for the companies I work for, like what we've had to adjust during the pandemic. Is there things you, besides, you know, not being able to be in physical locations, is there things that you've done to do during the pandemic that helped your business grow, even with it going on?
I think, to be fair, the big thing has been the fact that we couldn't teach in person, so it was either try and teach online or don't teach at all. And the problem that I found was, because I am a one-woman band and, you know, it doesn't generate a lot of revenue. It generates enough for me to get by, but obviously it doesn't generate like some of the big companies do. And so therefore I felt like I couldn't offer my services for free, which obviously a lot of people were having money struggles, and for a lot of people a dance class isn't necessarily high up on their like priorities of things to spend money on. And then also on top of that, you had all the celebrities like Joe Wicks, who I'm not like disregarding anything they did, because they were obviously helping a lot of people, but because they have that celebrity status and potentially were getting paid by other means, they could offer their services like on YouTube for free. So obviously a lot of people would have looked at that and thought, well, why am I going to pay her when I can get it for free from them? So that was a big battle, was trying to kind of almost kind of justify why I was charging for my classes when other celebrities and whatever were just doing it for free. And that was a big struggle, and it got to the point where, so we've been in 3 lockdowns now in this country, and so in between the first and second one, I could go back to a bit of in-person teaching, kind of like how I am now. And then come the second lockdown, I was trying my best to kind of advertise classes. Again, I didn't spend any real money on marketing, which that might have helped, but just nobody was interested at this point in doing fitness classes via Zoom, because I think everybody had just had enough of it. So for me, that's when I kind of turned my attention to just having to post dance videos on like TikTok and on Instagram, and just kind of like effectively stay relevant without actually providing my service at the time. So yeah, it's definitely been a big learning curve for sure.
I'm sure. Well, we've hit our max time. It has been 30 minutes. I don't know if I told you this before the show. I do 30-minute shows just because I have found in this area it keeps people's attention more than a hour-long episode. But I've thought about doing like a special episode every once in a while, but that hasn't happened yet. But Hannah, thank you so much for joining me. It has been a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time, and even though it's probably it's late over there, I'm glad you were able to connect with me. I know it was bounced back and forth until we finally got this episode in, but I'm glad we got to do it. It was such a pleasure talking with you. So for everybody out there, I know we are still in the middle of a pandemic, whether you're in the UK, the US, Japan, wherever you're listening, please stay safe. Please continue to follow your guidelines. I know that a lot of people do not want to. I myself am still struggling with getting used to everything, but just please stay safe. Thank you all for listening. Please stay tuned for next week or the next couple days. I have a couple guests coming on. They're just bouncing around, but we'll have them on. So stay tuned, and thank you again, Hannah, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right.